No problem. All right, welcome back to the Business Exit Playbook. I'm Trent Lee, and today we're going to dive into one of the most overlooked parts of buying a business: how to announce the sale to the staff, the customers, without losing people. If you get this wrong, it can kill the morale. You lose key employees, you scare off your best clients. But if you get it right, it protects the trust, keeps people calm, it preserves the value that you just bought. And so today, happy to have my long term friend, Adam. We've known each other for years, and he is one of the best, smartest business brokers I know. So, what better person to have than Adam? So, Adam, you want to give us a quick introduction here?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Trent, and I'll try to live up to those compliments. But been in this business for about 10 plus years, done almost a couple hundred deals, which is a lot, but nothing compared to your esteemed expert and leader, Trent Lee. And really excited about being here. This is an extremely important topic, as you mentioned, and I'm happy to contribute.
Yeah, perfect. So buyers obsess over due diligence, which they should. Lenders obsess over cash flow, which they should as well. But employees, customers, they obsess over change. People, when they hear a new owner or the business being sold, their minds go to one word: uncertainty. Today, we talk about a general roadmap, best practices to keep both the staff and the customers calm during a transition. So, Adam, why do employees fear change when the business is being sold? What have you seen?
So there's a new owner that's come in, and you are the new owner. And people have fear and concern, first and foremost, about change that will impact them personally or financially, their job. And so, one of the most important things that we tell any buyer is to really sit down with your employees right away in person, look them in the eye, and tell them that you just bought a successful business and the employees are vital to the success of that business. And the most foolish thing any buyer could possibly do is to make changes right away. And so you need to calm them in a meeting with everybody together as physically possible. And they need to hear from you about your vision over the next 30, 90, 180, 365 days. Ideally, you're with the seller at this meeting so they can introduce you and discuss why they chose you to be the buyer of this business. But you need to establish trust and communicate that you are here to learn from them and that you are dedicated to keeping the key employees. From minute one, you are on the clock and you don't realize it, but you have to listen the first 30, 60, 90 days. We like to give people a notebook, a blank notebook when they buy a business and say, fill this notebook up. Until you filled it up with notes, you cannot make any changes.
Hmm.
All the changes you want to make, I guarantee you, the employees have thought of that before. The prior owner probably thought of that before, and there's probably a good reason, or there is a reason why they didn't do that. So if you all of a sudden come up with these change ideas, you got to listen to what's been done before, why it wasn't done, and really establish that trust in that first 90 days to 180 days. And you have to publicly commit to not changing anything. That sounds really hard. You now have debt on this business. You're the new owner. You are the stress. You got to make payroll. But you're going to gain so much loyalty and respect from your team if you engage them and listen to them as to why they are doing things while taking all your notes and keeping your ideas to yourself until you've been around, you've built your credibility, you've built up your trust and hopeful loyalty with the new employees. So every buyer that I talk to says, I'm not going to change anything for 180 days. And I would tell you most of them fail within 30 days. They say, oh, I'm just going to make this change or just make this change. I would tell a buyer the most important word to eliminate from your vocabulary is the word change. And I would replace it with, when you are ready, the word experiment. Experiment has more, it generates some more excitement. Hey, we're going to have an experiment on X, Y, and Z that involves participation from your employees, potentially from your vendors, potentially from your clients. And it's a less scary word, and words matter when you're the new buyer and owner of this business. So avoid the word change, use the word experiment. We're going to experiment with this. You're going to get impact, you're
Yeah,
going to
love that.
get totally different psychological reaction from your new employees.
Yeah, I love that. When's the best time for a buyer in this case to come in and announce to the staff that, to your point, you had mentioned ideally that happens with the seller and buyer together, but when's the best time? What have you found is a reasonable time to do that?
My experience working on the sell side, I never let employees address mass amounts of employees until after not only the deal is closed, but the wire has been cleared and the attorney says you're good to go. So I never let that happen until that point. But ideally in the morning, and ideally the buyer should bring in food. Something about food relaxes people. Whether you're in a blue collar like a HVAC or plumbing, meet everybody out in the warehouse when they're loading their trucks. Bring donuts, biscuits, coffee, whatever you want. People relax when they have food. There's nervous energy. And by giving them the ability to have food, it really, you're breaking bread, literally. Sometimes it's not achievable on a morning. Maybe you have to do lunch, or sometimes you bring in pizza at the end of the day and let everyone sit down, and then maybe that's the introduction. I personally think that the buyer's introduction to the employees should be their first interaction. So I would not recommend a buyer show up in the morning. People wonder who you are all day, and then at the end of the day, they find out you're the new owner of the business. That first meeting should really be the first interaction with your new team. And again, ideally, the seller is there. You need to be prepared as the buyer to explain who you are, why this business is of interest to you, and most importantly, your vision for building upon the success of the company that you just bought. And you're here to work with them and listen to them. And hearing that vision with a little bit of food, a little bit of introduction will break the ice.
What do you tell, and you and I are on the same page on this, but what do you tell buyers who are like, I want to meet the employees before we close? How do I know if I buy the business, they're not all going to quit on day one? So part of my due diligence is I need to sit down with the staff and meet them and introduce myself.
It's really easy. You don't own the business. You're buying the business. You can do due diligence on the business. There's no reason. I think it's an unfounded fear. If the new owner takes care of the employees, doesn't change things right away, takes care of your customers, takes care of your vendors, there's no real reason for employees to leave. Over 90, 180, 360 days, as you learn about the company and the culture and the people and the workflow and everything, you may begin to make some experiments, not some changes, with some process and procedures and policies, but you're buying a successful business. Now, there's always one person that just may be resistant to change or new experiments, and they probably weren't long for the world. And honestly, it's usually an opportunity to put in your type of people, to hire someone. But I fundamentally, with most cases in small to medium sized businesses, they don't get access to the employees. The exception to the rule is in an SBA deal, if there's a key employee, a general manager, and it's really important that the buyer meet them, I will allow that typically in the last 3 to 5 days when due diligence has been taken care of, legal documents are basically done, and the attorney has said, yeah, we're just cleaning up documents. The lender has set a close date, and now we know we're pretty much almost certain, never 100%, but 99%. At that point, the lender's committed, the buyer's committed, the seller and legal is all committed. Then I would permit, only under those circumstances, a general manager or a key employee to meet with the buyer. But I just don't believe in that on small and medium-sized business. When you get into private equity deals, it's a different conversation, much higher dollars, much more at risk. But you don't get to
Yeah.
sleep in the home before you buy it. You're not going to go work in the business and meet the employees before you buy it. There's too much risk for the seller, and the buyer needs to understand that.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page with that. In fact, I've seen just the opposite happen, where if word gets out prematurely, it just causes so much uncertainty before we can really introduce the buyer, calm their nerves, make sure they know Nothing's coming in. No one's coming in to make major changes. We're not messing with compensation. We're not messing with benefits. And here's another thing I often see that happens. Both buyer and seller have seen Hollywood. And in Hollywood movies, people buy a business and they fire everyone. But in reality, at least in my experience, you can tell me if you've seen anything, literally in over 650 transactions that I've closed, I've never seen that happen once.
I
Not a
completely agree
single
with you.
time.
The total myth. And what I say is the buyers and the sellers are coming at the issue the same way and they don't realize it. The sellers want the buyers to keep all their employees. They've been good to the seller and they want to make sure that they are part of the company going forward. And the buyers want to keep the employees and they're fearful they're going to leave. And they're both actually saying the same thing, just from two different sides of the coin. And so they need to recognize that's what we try to do as a good third party intermediary. We try to explain you guys both want the same thing. You want the employees to stay and be taken care of. And both the seller wants that and the buyer wants that. And when you align interests like that, usually the transition is more successful. Making sure the buyer is prepared on day one so they don't show up and they don't know what they're doing and they don't know people's names and they don't understand. In part of due diligence and part of your transition planning before it closes, you need to know who the people are, what their roles are, have an org chart. So when you show up, it's not a blank stare. Oh, Fred, you're in accounting. Yeah, doing a great job. Susie, you're doing awesome in sales and marketing. Really appreciate all you've done. Little comments like that, knowing that you have taken the time to learn about them, really gets you off on a good start.
Yeah. And you really hit on all of these points, but I always tell my buyers the best way to keep everyone calm when you're announcing this is to remember an acronym, CALM. C is for communicate jointly, like we talked about with the seller, buyer and seller have a meeting, ideally in the morning with some food. A for calm, acronym is assure stability. Make sure that they know that their pay, the benefits, the services, nothing's changing. To your point, you hit on this fantastically, is in the L as far as goes, is listen privately. When there are one-on-one meetings with the staff, listen, take the time to listen. And then finally, M is move slowly. Don't make a bunch of big changes. If you follow that acronym, it really helps keep the employees fairly calm during the transition. Because the reality is, like we talked about before, they've seen too many Hollywood movies. They think their job is in jeopardy when they don't realize the buyer, in this case, doesn't know the business like they do. The sellers are more important than ever before to the new owner.
And I would just add to that, it's really important to listen. I think that was in one of we both talk about that. And as the new owner, you need to be deferential to the seller, let them talk, and make sure that after you have this initial meeting, make sure you have a plan to individually meet with everybody one on one and listen to hear them. They're going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. I always like to say that's when the real due diligence starts because you've learned everything, but now you're getting an additional layer of unfiltered information about the business. So it's really important to schedule those one-on-one interviews, ideally within the first week or so. You need to take care of your new employees more than anything else and showing them the respect by meeting with them one-on-one. You'll learn so much in that first week.
Yeah. Any big mistakes that you've seen, blow up deals that come to mind that we should mention?
Maybe not blow up deals, but I can tell you that most buyers have never bought a business before. And they think that the hardest part is getting through the transaction. And I hate to break it to you, but buying a business is the easy part. Running it successfully, getting off to a good start is the hardest thing ever. And it's really project management when you look at it. And we give people a checklist of all the things that they need to get done. I can tell you a couple of the two or three things that trip up so many people all the time, and they sound so basic and routine. But let me just highlight a couple. Obviously, you have to have your insurance or else the lender won't close. But making sure little things like imagine if you have a service company and they're trucks, okay? You got to get titles redone. You got to get insurance in the vehicle, the little cards. You got to get all that updated immediately. You don't want to put a driver out in the field in a position if they get in an accident and the paperwork is not, oh, that's the old owner. It creates suspicion on someone else in an accident. It creates, with police are involved, get your paperwork. The other thing that I see all the time that it amazes me is how many people don't have credit cards or debit cards for their employees ready on day. These are
Mm.
not typically as easy as people think. It isn't a week process, usually by your lender. It can take several weeks. So you need, when you start targeting your close date with your lender and your attorney and the seller, you need to make sure you have credit cards, debit cards, purchase cards, all things like that taken care of. You need to have your vendor forms filled out on day one. That first week, in my opinion, a buyer should be doing nothing but two things: making sure all the paperwork, some of which I just talked about, is transitioned with the seller working side by side in week one. And any other time, you should be working on employee matters, meeting them, greeting them, learning about them, their background, what makes them tick, any ideas. Everything else in that first week, to me, is extra. You have to work to get, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of transition, there's a lot of things you got to get set up, even though you think you've been doing that for the last X amount of weeks with due diligence. Once you own that company, there's a whole set of different things, making sure all your bank accounts are working. What if you have sales and use tax information? You should have taken care of all your employee information. Obviously, payroll should be set up prior to or at close. There's just a lot of little moving parts. And here is the thing: your new employees are waiting for you to screw up. You don't realize it, but they're waiting for you to screw up. And then there's, oh, things are changing. Oh, he's not up, or they're not up to this. You have to execute. It will make the greatest impression because you got done saying your vision, things aren't going to change. And now all of a sudden, payroll changes. That is the number one thing that we tell people: under no circumstances should you ever change. If company you're buying uses ADP, work with ADP, make the easy transition. You want to make a switch to a different payroll company, save a few bucks, do that 6, 9, 12 months down the road. But payroll to me is 1, 2, and 3 on the most important thing that a new buyer cannot screw up. So those
Yeah,
are just
that's
some of the examples. I'll tell a great story. I sold a business in the service industry, and he decided he was going to go to an app for paying his payroll. And of course, that next Friday, the app didn't work. And all the employees texted the new owner 5 days into the business and said, if this is not fixed by Monday at 5 p.m., we're quitting. It was 35 people. The business, he did the number one rule. He tried to change payroll. You cannot, it's the spinal column. People need their paychecks. And so you cannot make these mistakes. It may be more expensive to use your provider. I say the same thing with insurance. Mirror the insurance with the same insurance broker. You want to change it to your buddy 6, 12 months down the road? Fine. As little disruption as possible. These sound easy. So many buyers, oh, I'm going to save $200 here and $100 there. You have no idea that savings is so irrelevant relative to your trust of your new employees, and making sure you do what I call blocking and tackling 100%. You will gain so much credibility from your new team if you execute properly. And it's high stakes. You are the new owner. All eyes are on you. You have to be 100%.
Yeah, I love that. Switching gears, any best practices or mistakes to avoid when it comes to introducing yourself to customers or vendors?
I think it's relatively similar. You want to introduce yourself. You want to tell why you're interested in why you purchased this successful business. And I'm here to listen to you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, or Mr. and Mrs. Vendor. We want to learn how our successful relationship has been over the years. What are some things you think we can do better? What are some things that we need to improve upon? But I'm there to listen. It's 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I want the vendors, clients to do most of the talking, and I need to listen as the new buyer. That's hard, but it takes discipline. And amazingly, one of the things that buyers are somewhat surprised in, and I'll give an example. If you're buying the ABC business, and let's say the owners that you bought it from were north of 65, okay? They might have a nice business, but they may not be investing as much, and people are wondering about growth of their jobs or future. You'd be amazed how many employees, how many vendors, and how many customers are going to be thrilled to see a new buyer. They may have loyalty to the seller, but they're actually excited and invigorated. Now, all of a sudden, this young couple just bought this business, and instead of one day having two owners in their 60s, they have two owners in their mid 30s with little kids. Rejuvenates people. Hey, these guys are buying a successful business. They want to really grow and invest. And so that's good for employees, it's good for vendors, that's good for clients. And so there are a lot of positives. You just have to go with a little bit of humility, and you need to listen. Your customers, your vendors, your clients will tell you things, how to get better. They want you to be successful. Your clients want you to provide them more product. Your vendors want to sell you more things, and your employees want a paycheck and a good culture and a good place to be. And you have the chance to do it all as long as you listen and don't change things.
I always tell the buyers, especially when it comes to customers and vendors, suppliers, right after closing, the first 60 days sets the tone for their relationship. And the best thing they can do is be very quick to respond, because silence just breeds uncertainty. And when there's customers and vendors, suppliers that are wondering, how's this new buyer going to be, this new owner, how are they going to be to work with, even if they're overwhelmed and super busy, a simple message, which, hey, I got your message, I'll be back in touch, goes a long way just to give them a little bit of time rather than letting the message, voicemail,
100%
email
agree.
sit there for 2 or 3 days without a
Yep.
response.
Silence is your enemy. 100% agree.
Yeah. What about the seller's role in this? 30, 60 days post closing, how much do you have them stick around? How much do you have them help with the transition?
Yeah, obviously it's deal by deal, but generally I would say most small deals and up to say 5, 6 million with an SBA deal, we tell our clients early in the process, and we encourage this, is first 30 days, you're probably going to be close to full time. After 30 days, between days 31 and 90, probably cut it back in the second month to maybe 2 or 3 days a week, maybe 20 hours a week. And in that third month, it may still be 20 hours a week, or it may just be you come in on Mondays and go through the week and have a one-on-one meeting. There's always going to be some reconciliation about funds pre and post close. So the seller is going to want to be around just to make sure if there are any outstanding obligations that everything is trued up. At a certain point, past 90 days, I think it can create some stickiness or challenges is the right word, because after 90 days, a buyer may want to start to make some changes, and the seller may not want to be around for some of those changes. It also sends a message to the employees who's really in charge here. When you have that introductory meeting, we always tell the sellers that they need to say to the employees, from this point forward, he or she is the new owner, and their answer is what matters. You can't keep coming to me, even though you may have been coming to me for the last 20 years. I may have my opinion, but I'm going to defer to the new owner. It's their business. I'm here to support him or her and the employees, but it's a gradual transfer. I've seen people stay on as little as 5 days, and I've seen people stay on up to a year, but I would tell you most people are leaving somewhere between 45 and 180 days, and that's really got to be mutually agreed by the parties. But first 30 days, the seller's got to be available to be there full time, just to transition on all the things that the buyer is going to need assistance with.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This has been really great. Anything that we have not touched on that you think's relevant here that a buyer would want to know to make a smooth transition, whether it's employees, customers, vendors, whoever it might happen to be?
Yeah. I would say congratulations on buying a business. Again, that's the easy part, but you got to listen to your gut. Your gut is usually right more times than not. I find the buyers that get in trouble quickly are the ones that are afraid to ask honest, hard questions of the seller post close. And the other two reasons why buyers get off to a challenge is one, not listening to your employees, your vendors, and your clients, and two, going too fast. And so listen, fill up that notebook, have your ideas, vet them. And once you have built up these relationships, you'll be able to move quicker in the next 90 or the third 90 days and maybe to shape and make some changes. Remember, you're buying a successful business. It was successful from the old owner, and you need to make sure it's successful with the new owner and make sure you're not the reason that the business starts to decline. So,
Mm.
humility, listen, great opportunity. Super excited for you to buy a business and be part of a great opportunity to improve your community and your family wealth and financial situation. But it's hard. The last thing I'll say, which I think is super, super important, that many buyers do not realize, is owning a business can be lonely. And I strongly recommend you get into some networking groups, some peer groups, some groups to put you in a position to be with other like-minded business owners so you have a safe place to talk to people, to learn from them, learn from their experiences, share, hey, I'm going through this on an employee issue. Have you ever dealt with that? Rely on your advisors that helped you get through and rely on other business owners, and you'll be much more successful.
That's fantastic. If there's any buyers out there that want to know how to connect with you, have you helped them buy a business? Tell them what areas do you serve and how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm based in the Carolinas here, and I can be found online. You can Google me, Adam Petrikoff, pretty readily out there. Our website is Next Chapter Advisors, and that is nxtchapteradvisors.com. So we look forward to
Nice.
helping you. And Trent, you're doing a great service to the industry. That's why I'm happy to participate and really appreciate the opportunity to share some wisdom out there and just happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.